Hey there, we're the Basic Liches. We are two D&D Dungeon Masters trying to learn Pathfinder 2nd Edition for the first time. In this series, we're going through every class in the core rulebook for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We're going to give a basic overview, we do a day in the life of this class, and then we also give some GM tips, Game Master tips later on.
This is not going to be a deep dive of the fighter class, which is what we're covering today. Also, we won't be covering anything outside of core rulebook options. Hopefully by the end of the video, we're going to give you a little taste, let you know if the fighter class in Pathfinder 2e is right for you or not.
So what do you think of when you think of a fighter? What are the themes? What in pop culture reminds you of the most fighteriest fighter?
The performance that comes into my mind is from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and no, I'm not talking about Conan the Barbarian. Or Terminator. I'm talking about John Matrix from Commando, one of the all-time greatest action extravaganzas that has ever been committed to celluloid. Sure, in this movie he is using mostly guns to, I think he kills like 150 people in this movie, and that's not an exaggeration. He's using a lot of guns, but he also takes a machete at one point and lops someone's arm off. He stabs somebody with a pitchfork. He snaps this dude's neck on an airplane like it's a French baguette. He is literally, anything can be a weapon in his hands, and I love that. And I just think of this super soldier, and he has the physique. He has the cunning. He's sneaky. He's charming. He is everything that I want out of the fighter class. John Matrix.
One that I couldn't really get out of my head when I thought of this, one of my favorite dueling martial scenes, especially with weapons and shields, right, is a scene from Troy with Brad Pitt, very young Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt is Achilles. He plays Achilles from Greek mythology, and this is, a movie about the Trojan War. And what I like about Achilles was he had this signature move. And they never explained it in the movie. It would just always happen, where he would do this leaping lunge and down with the spear. He would always try to clip people right in this jugular shoulder blade thing and just sink it right in. So that's it. He does that one move, runs by him without looking back, and the guy falls. Right? He was throwing javelins, throwing spears, using a shield, using a gladius sword and shield, putting the shield on his back, using two gladius swords at the same time.
Yeah.
His versatility and skill with weaponry is just exceeded everyone else on the battlefield that he could just kind of plow through.
We're gonna look at some mechanics for you and start peeling back layers of the onion that is the fighter.
So key abilities for this class. We could either go all strength or all dex. The fighter class has versatility where we could be up front and fighting. We also have the ability to be a bowman.
For key terminology with the fighter class, we've got a few things that you've seen before and some new stuff that we haven't covered yet. The very first key term that we're talking about is flourish. If you're using flourish, it has to be used only once per turn. So if you use a feature or a feat or a technique that has the flourish trait, you can only use one of those per attack round.
The next key term is open. If you're using a feat with the open trait, then you need to use that as the first attack in your turn.
Next up, we have press, which is the opposite of open. You can't press your attacks unless you've already attacked that turn, meaning that you need to actually have a multiple attack penalty before you can use a feat or feature with the press trait.
So you have to have had attacked once first. Yep. And then any attack after that could use the press.
Yep. Trait. So you could attack with something that has open, and then you can attack again with something that has press.
Cool.
Which I'm assuming is going to be creating these sort of combinations, which is kind of cool, actually.
Then we have the stance. The stance is a general combat tactic. It lasts for a period of time, and basically will continue until the conditions of the stance are violated, or the encounter is over, or you're unconscious, and you can't do a different stance or the same stance again for another round. So you can't switch stances within the same round.
Attack of opportunity. What? Whoa! As you've no doubt heard, Attacks of opportunity do not come standard baked into every single class or monster in Pathfinder 2e. It actually has to be a feature or feat that you have or take. So attacks of opportunity, they work kind of like how they work in 5th edition. If something is in melee strike range and they use a manipulate action, or they use a move action, or a range attack action, or they move away from a square, you can use your reaction to make a melee strike against that creature.
Fighters are the only ones that get attacks of opportunity at level 1. Then you also get the shield block feat, which allows you to use a reaction to raise your shield and block some incoming damage. So what's this class like to play in a day of adventuring? Let's do the day in the life. If you'd like to continue to train with the basic liches and become a master in Pathfinder 2nd edition, please subscribe here and toll the dead for notifications.
Go ahead and drop us a comment. We do try to read them and respond when we can. Let us know what you think about the fighter, why it's better than 5e, and tell us why we're wrong, why it's the best class in the game. You wake up, your head's swimming from the tavern last night. You head downstairs to get another drink, fix this little headache with a little bit of hair of the dog. You bark at the bartender to get you some bacon, some buttered bread. A surly ruffian begins to mouth off to you, and before he can even get an insult out, you ram an iron gauntlet straight into his face hole. You drag him outside, leave him in the hot, blistering sun, and you flick a few extra coins to the bartender for your troubles.
Sorry about the mess. We took a look around, and we're a little offset. We went outside, and we looked up at the sign, and we realized this isn't the same tavern that the rest of the party stayed at. We try to recall the events of the night before. We seem to remember being with the druid, and the druid turned into a cat, and the druid went off with the bard to the brothel to discover, to try to find more information. We're trying to think of what was the name of that brothel. All of a sudden, we turn around, and the bouncer from the brothel just sucker punches us right in the face. Fight ensues with this guy. We don't even remember why this guy is so mad at us. This guy caught us off guard, and without any hesitation, we use our power attack to use 2 actions to do some extra damage and get this guy knocked out. We rummage through this guy's satchel, and we find a business card that says the Silk Minx Bar and Brothel. That was the name of the place. 12 Archer Street, across the street from Pete's Pets.
The Minx is closed because it's daytime. We look around, see if anybody's looking at us, and we head towards the back of the building, see if there's a back door that we can sneak in. Once we're out back, there is no door. We scan our surroundings using our keen senses. We look around. We do spot that there is a window that is ajar on the 2nd floor. We spit into our hands and we leap up. We grab onto the ledge and we hoist ourselves through the open window.
Make an athletics check.
Only to find out that once we're safely inside, whoosh, we get socked in the back of our already throbbing skull. We're seeing stars, our vision's blurred. Can it be our friend Fresnik Reznor, the barbarian, the one who punched us in the head? Why have you done this, barbarian? Fresnik Reznor is also looking for the bard and druid and mistook you for an interloper.
So we start exploring the brothel, and it's surprisingly dark and kind of full of cobwebs. The barbarian's like speaking loudly. Oh, I didn't know it was you, mate. And then like, shh. Have him keep quiet. We're gonna use our senses. Oh, we hear some sounds coming from the basement. We're like, come on, mate, let's go. We get up to the door, nice and quiet. Since we're so close, we do a couple of hand signals to the barbarian to like go through quietly. He doesn't understand hand signals, so he just barges through, and we facepalm.
We get into the cellar of this brothel, and it is covered from wall to ceiling in thick, coarse, sticky spider webs. Along the ceiling, we see the druid and the bard, and they are wrapped up in thick coils of spider web. Uh-oh, this isn't good. The barbarian already has his hands full as he is fighting 2 dastardly spider women. We're using the hunter spider stat block. We're just reskinning them as spider women. He's fighting them off. This is our time. We use this opportunity to try to cut our friends down from the ceiling. Eventually, you're able to kill one of these brain-sucking spider people. But as that happens, another one is trying to run past you and assault the barbarian. you use this time to use your attack of opportunity to slice at their Achilles and slash at them as grotesque neon purple blood splatters across the white cobwebs of this room. What a glorious day in the life of a fighter, but it is time for us to make some assumptions on YouTube. Hey Mo, how would you classify the fighter in Pathfinder 2e?
Like we're playing a video game?
Yes, like we're playing a video.
I'd say melee DPS. We're not as defensive as maybe a paladin or even a barbarian has a pretty large chunk of health. We have good health, but we're going to be doing a lot more damage with our weapons and our feats and skills.
All right, let's get to some pros and cons of the fighter.
Pros with the fighter, I think it's an easy class to play. Where it gets difficult to play is how many feats you're going to be getting as you level up. So it's going to start off super easy, and then as we increase, it's going to start getting a little more difficult. But it's a good entry level class, and your character is made by your feats, which feats are probably the most fun part of Pathfinder. So to have a character who has the most feats out of any other class and plays around with feats entirely seems like a pretty good pro for this class.
Which makes sense because there's no subclasses for the fighter, right?
No.
We didn't cover any of them because there are none. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. The big pro for me is I think the fighter is the showcase of Pathfinder 2e's character building, character creation system, using those feats. I think if you're coming over from 5th edition and you really want to get granular and customize a character that you're building, the fighter is the one where you're just like, you have no subclasses, you have nothing like that. It's all about the feats that you select, and that is how you're going to play at the table. So it is a beacon of just like, this is Pathfinder 2e. So I think that's a huge pro for just the system in general. It's almost like the flagship class in a way.
Yeah, it seems like it. What's kind of not so great about the fighter class?
Well, I will probably catch a little bit of flack for that, and that's okay. You guys can hit me up in the comments, but
You're used to the abuse.
I still think that this is a very basic melee class. I know people are like, oh, the melee classes in Pathfinder are amazing, and yes, I think as you level up, you're going to get plenty of feats, and it's going to feel really great, but I still don't think that the fighter is as interesting as the barbarian with its rage mechanics and the anathemas that it has.
Definitely.
And I don't think it's as interesting as even the champion that has that really high defense and the anathemas that come from its deity, and just having a deity in general. There's a little bit more to it.
So it's lacking those themes, which kind of help with role play.
Right.
Right. So again, lending to the fact that this is likely an entry-level class where you don't have to role play so hard. You can just sink into Pathfinder's feat system and have a blast with it.
Yes. What you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, and that's going to be a pro or a con, I guess. But like, we both being heavy role players, not having those sort of built-in things, especially after like every single class seemingly has them. You're like, oh, this one has it. Oh, this one has it. And you get to the fighter, you're like, there's no subclasses and there's no anathemas. There's nothing like that to really just grab onto.
What seems to have been a Pathfinder staple in most of the other classes isn't in here. I think that's a pretty big con for me. So who's going to love playing the fighter? What kind of players?
I think the player that just loves combat. That's their favorite mode of play. That's their favorite pillar. They just love to just slash and kill shit. They are going to be enamored with the fighter. The min-maxer. If you're the type of player that really dives into theory crafting, or you're going to find like a build online that you're like, this is going to be the fighter that I build.
This is the best collection of feats, and I can swap these feats out when I prepare each morning, and yeah.
If that's your jam, then the fighter is definitely the peanut butter sandwich that you want to be slathered on.
I also think this class is good for the newbie. It's good for the 5th edition convert into Pathfinder. It's good entry-level position. There's not a lot to think about except your feats.
Pays minimum wage, no benefits. All right, we want to talk about the difficulty that we perceive the fighter class to be at level 1, lower levels. I think it's about a 2 out of 5. I think that you are essentially going to be creating this list of feats that you keep acquiring, and those are going to kind of stack up. And eventually you're just going to have that character sheet that's full of feats and features, and then they're going to be having different traits like open, press, stance. I don't think it's very difficult.
No.
But I think that it's a little bit more than it's just enough to push it like away from a 1 for me. All right, Game Masters, you have a fighter at the table. We got some tips and tricks for you. What are you thinking?
Have them solve disputes in like 1v1 duels. You know, have kings and lords take interest in them and kind of use them as pawns to carry out their biddings, to increase morale on certain sides of the army, and certain sides of the battlefield.
There should be like a fighter speech, almost like how there's like a druidic language.
Yep.
So there's just like
you wouldn't approach a guard and talk in that manner. You just
Yes. Yeah, you're not going to be very like erudite and like better than thou as a wizard and just be like, oh hello, it's yes, we're trying to
You'll like crack a joke and make fun of them.
Yes.
You know,
you're gonna bust balls.
You'll bust his balls. Yeah.
Yep.
Bust his chops.
Yep.
You're like, oh, that's a good one, mate.
Yeah.
Like, you know, what can I do for you?
Yes, and I would actually like reward a fighter for using stuff like that. And last but not least, you sort of touched on this, is there's no anathemas, there's no real juicy bits for players to munch on and bite on for role playing. So you sort of have to work with the fighter. Give them something to fight for. Maybe it's love, maybe it's money, maybe it's freedom. Work with that player, find out what causes them to tick. What do they fight for? That's really important to figure out. So make sure that is rock solid before you even start rolling dice.
Let's make some more assumptions and compare this to 5e Fighter versus Pathfinder 2e Fighter. What are our opinions? What do you feel about it?
I dig the fighter. I think Pathfinder 2e does a better job than 5e, if I'm being honest. Some of those 5e subclasses, they just feel super duper flat to me. Like, I feel like champion is something that most people only I'm gonna multi-class and dip 3 levels into it to get the increased threat range for criticals. You don't really see that in this Pathfinder fighter. But that being said, this is still not my jam. This isn't something that I'm personally going to want to play. I'm not dying to play this class. I think that all the feats you can choose and all the customization is a huge improvement. Huge improvement. I can't stress that enough, because I think in 5e, if you're like an Eldritch Knight or a Battle Master, you're just sort of locked in. And I don't like how 5e limits a lot of the stuff you can use. Like if you're a Battle Master, you're like, oh, you can do this cool stuff, but you have your superiority die.
Yeah.
You only get 4 of them per...
It's a pool, and then it gets replenished.
It punishes you for trying to do cool stuff, and that doesn't seem to be the case in Pathfinder. You get a feat, you get a feature, whatever it is, it's another ability. It's almost like an at-will ability from 4th edition, which I love.
And things like fighting styles, I think, which is a great plus that Pathfinder has, is the fighting styles are feats, so you can take them and you can mix and match them. I think that's the strongest advantage that this system has over 5e, is you could take I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but it's whatever their archery mastery is, and take like their sword fighting mastery and kind of swap between shooting your bow and arrow and then putting it away and running in with sword and board. And that could just be your fight style, is to go back and forth between both. And that's kind of what the fighter is meant to be, the versatility and changing melee combat. That's what makes it shine for me, to be different than 5e.
I want to make that dagger master, but I want it to be someone that can do tons of damage. And I feel like you could probably figure out a way to do that in Pathfinder, whereas you certainly can't in 5e. I've looked at it because I'm like, that's like a weird character archetype that I've always wanted to play, is this dude that's just literally, there's just blades.
All his weapons are in his...
He's covered from head to toe with throwing knives and daggers, and he is just they're just hidden everywhere. He's just lighting people up, but he's doing tons of damage. In real life, if you were to throw a knife at somebody, you'd probably fucking kill him. But it's in 5e, it's 1d4. So it's it completely obliterates that style of play, and it makes this cool thing where you're like, I want to do this. And you're like, it doesn't make... I'm not a min-maxer, but at the same time, I don't want to play the fighter that sucks at fighting and killing.
Yeah.
So...
There's a problem with both of these systems, and it's probably the problem that all video games and tabletop games like this have, is that the fighter is the entry level class for like all games. Apparently, seemingly not for DCC though, because they've actually taken a simple mechanic. They still kind of made it a simple class. It is still kind of an entry-level thing, but it's a lot more thematic and narrative to that class, and it takes precedence of what a fighter is and makes you actually feel like a fighter.
It just feels so much better than every other fighter class that I've ever played.
Well, it's like the biggest problem that you don't want to have while playing a fighter is I run in and I attack it. Every round is I run in and I attack. I run in and I attack. Well, DCC has that system where it's okay, you can, you're explaining this elaborate thing you want to do, and it's pushing the limit. Basically, what is it called?
Mighty Deed.
A Mighty Deed.
Mighty Deed of Arms.
And you explain that this is what you want to be doing as a fighter, is I rush him and I shield bash him across the head. I want to try to make him dizzy, get him off balance, kick his foot out from under him, and go to stab him while he's on the ground. Like, that's the kind of thing you want to do as a fighter, and that's what you want to be thinking about, not just I run in and I attack.
I do think it's better than 5e. My final thoughts on it is I do think it's better than 5th edition by a long shot.
Yeah, but they just suffer from the same affliction together.
Yes. All right, so that was the fighter. We had some fun. We went over all the mechanics. We learned a lot. We hope you guys are learning along with us. Again, please be kind to us. We are very new at Pathfinder. We've only been playing it for a few months now, but we want to learn with you. We want to show you what we're learning. So continue to follow us week in and week out as we cover the remainder of the core rulebook classes.
That's why we want you to tell us what's really fun in this game. What are your favorite classes? What are your favorite feat mix-ups? Please let us know. Right here, we got the playlist for this series. Over there, we have another video about Pathfinder. Please follow us. Thank you for watching. Later, Licious.
Bye.